With the imminent launch of Samsung's Galaxy S25 series, you're definitely going to be seeing price cuts on the S24. And there are also going to be a whole bunch of people selling their phones off because some people tend to upgrade every year. So because of all this, I feel now is a great time to talk about a phone that I've been using as my secondary since launch, the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And for about 3 months or so at various points in the last year, I've also used this phone as my primary. In fact, I'm doing so right now. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what I feel are the pros and cons of buying an S24 Ultra in 2025. If this is your first time here, or in case you just can't remember, my name's Ash, you're watching C4E Tech, and if you do find this video useful, helpful, whatever, drop a like, get subscribed, and let's get started. One of the best things about this phone, as per a lot of people, is its anti-reflective display. And I guess that's good, but I don't know, I threw tempered glass on mine within a week of getting it. So yes, I am sacrificing the anti-reflectiveness of the screen for a bit of peace of mind. And I am okay with that trade-off. But what about you? Do you think it's stupid? If you had a S24 Ultra, would you put tempered glass on it? Yes? No? Let me know in the comments. Now the display, it's excellent, rich and vibrant. It's seemingly not as contrasty as phones before it, but personally, I've never had an issue with the vibrancy here. I mean, every time I switched from the S24 Ultra to another phone that I was testing, I never noticed any marked improvement. And the same applies in reverse too, because when I returned back to this phone a few months later, not once did I feel, man, this display sucks, it's not vibrant. Now, I feel this is one issue that was blown way out of proportion during the S24 Ultra's early days. Now, the display here, it's a 2K panel, very crisp, over 500 pixels per inch pixel density. The refresh maxes out at 120 Hz. There's LTPO, so it's efficient too. It's awesome for consuming media. The loud stereo speakers definitely help. There is support for HDR10+, but given it's Samsung, there's no Dolby Vision, which is a minor con. But barring that, I really have no complaints with this panel. It's been a pleasure to use. It's very bright, maxes out at about 1700 nits. So even on Dubai's sunniest days, I had no issues using this phone for navigation mounted on my handlebar. And oh yeah, this is a flat panel covered by Corning's Gorilla Armor. And though the S25 Ultra is expected to have slimmer bezels, the bezels here, they still do hold up in 2025. What do you think? Pretty slim, right? The S24 Ultra, it's not a small phone, but the way it's spread, it's pretty even, so it never feels too heavy in hand, even with the basic case on. I definitely say it's easier to hold and use when you compare it to phones with those big circular camera arrays that take up half the back. And going by leaks, the S25 Ultra is expected to have a very similar design. So I'd say this phone, the design, it still holds up in 2025. In fact, I actually prefer some aspects of it. Like the sides here are curved. With the S25 Ultra, it's expected to be flat. Ergonomically, I'd prefer what they've done here. Now, to be fair, the corners are quite sharp on the S24 Ultra, and that's something Samsung's addressing with the S25. Anyways, that's all speculation at this point, but I really do think the build on this phone, it's very good, and it will definitely hold up for the next few years at least. Now, talking about things that will hold up for a few years at least, the SoC on the inside, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, it's still a very capable performer. It runs most games well. That said, sustained performance is not really Samsung's forte, and they don't seem to care about it either. Guys, this is probably the worst performing 8 Gen 3 I've come across with respect to sustained performance. Now, around launch, the S24 Ultra lost over 50% of its peak performance on a 20-minute stress test. These are numbers from GSM Arena. Now, in 2025, many an update later, it still loses over half its peak performance on a stress test. Now, I say Samsung doesn't seem to care because this is not an isolated incident. The S22 Ultra, the S23 Ultra, they exhibited the same kind of behavior too. And it's not like Samsung cannot push it, they choose not to. Now, there's an insane amount of thermal headroom. This phone maxes out at about 37 degrees. 8 Elite flagships are cracking 50 degrees on many phones. Above 45 is what we typically call warm, hot. Above 40 is considered cool. And here's Samsung chilling at 37. Now the reason for this is This sustained performance part, not a lot of people really test it or really care. The common end consumer doesn't really care. Whereas the phone getting a little warm when people are shooting, say, 4K video or doing something stressful, that probably gets Samsung more negative publicity than this does. So from that perspective, when they're catering to this wider audience, Samsung is being very conservative with respect to how they are tuning their chips. At least that's my guess. If you have a different explanation, let me know in the comments. So if sustained performance is high priority for you, either you're gonna have to pick up a good clip-on cooler like this, or choose literally any other 8 Gen 3 on the market. Moving on, I am not gonna spend a lot of time talking about the software since One UI 7 is already in beta and initial reports coming out seem to indicate it's running very well on the S24 Ultra. Software over the years, it's become a strength for Samsung. One UI is just very reliable and consistent. In my experience, I almost never noticed any drop frames or lag. The S Pen, as always, has been a pleasure to use, especially when I'm out in the cold with gloves on. Love it. Circle to Search too has been very helpful. When I'm traveling, I use it a lot to translate stuff. Very convenient. The AI features, honestly, once the novelty of it wore off, I never really went back to it, and I've seen many people say the same. Anyways, if you are buying this phone in 2025, you still have a good 6 years of software support, Android version updates, and that is better than what most brands offer if you're buying a phone that they've launched this year in 2025. So gotta give Samsung this one. Their update policy is pretty darn awesome. Now, if there is one thing that's not really aged well, that would have to be the battery capacity and the charging speed. Don't get me wrong, the 5000 mAh battery here, it is good, easily lasts me a full day on a single charge, and that 45-watt charging speed, that's also workable. 40% in 15 minutes, about an hour for a full charge, it's alright. But the competition these days are offering much faster chargers. Even wirelessly, if you look at it, Samsung tops out at just 15 watts, which isn't all that much. Now, I don't really care about that a lot. What I do care about though is that in late 2024, after a long time, we had a breakthrough of sorts in smartphone technology, something that kind of shook up the market, and that's silicon carbon batteries. Now, silicon carbon tech, what it's doing is it's letting brands fit in 20 to 30% higher capacity batteries without changing anything, without increasing the weight or the thickness. So a lot of brands, if you see, they're currently launching phones at about the same size and the weight as this one, but with 6000 plus milliamp hour batteries. Now, of course, the S25 Ultra isn't expected to use silicon carbon, but this is one thing to keep in mind if you're considering buying this phone. Now, moving on, one of the biggest reasons, in my humble opinion, to choose the S24 Ultra would be this: the optics. Yes, there are phones that do certain things better than the S24 Ultra. I'm not saying no. There are phones that use larger sensors, wider aperture lenses, offer gimbal stabilization, much better low-light video, awesome 35mm equivalent lenses. But none of them, at least on the Android side of things, offer as consistent a performance as the S24 Ultra does. Over the entire year, where I took multiple trips, the two phones I always carried with me as backup cameras were the iPhone Pro Max and the S24 Ultra. Now, I do think there is a difference between other creators saying it and me saying it, because other creators might not get to use all these Chinese phones, but my trips are to China. I'm currently in China, so I cover all the Chinese launches. I've used all those phones, but the S24 Ultra has been a lot more consistent. Like I said, there are some things they all do better than this phone, but the consistency, now for example, the 200 megapixel primary, it does very well with detail, with colors. It's pretty social media ready. The 3x and 5x, they are good too. The ultra wide is okay-ish. This is the one that's supposed to be getting upgraded with the S25 Ultra. But honestly, I don't think an ultra wide upgrade alone is gonna be worth spending extra on. Now, realistically, the still performance, as I've mentioned multiple times already, it's been matched and even beat by some of the competition. But the one area where Samsung's been totally unchallenged, at least on the Android side, is video. Forget 8K 30, which is quite good, but usually more trouble than it's worth. 4K 60 on this phone is amazing, very stable, no EIS jitter, there's a lot of detail, beautiful colors, on-point exposure. This is the main reason the S24 Ultra has been my go-to Android phone when I travel. So overall, the S24 Ultra in 2025 seems to be a very viable option, given if you are picking it up at reduced prices or if you're getting one used. Especially, I'd recommend it if you want that Samsung experience, or if you're especially looking to hold on to a phone for more than just a couple of years because of the support policy that Samsung has to offer. And I guess that's my take on this phone. What do you think about the S24 Ultra in 2025? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching. Ash out.